Good day, dear children. Today we will be dealing with the third chapter in your Hornbill textbook. The title of the chapter is Discovering Tut, The Saga Continues by A.R. Williams. The writer is a former senior writer for National Geographic magazine. She specialized in archaeology and her writings include news stories on the latest archaeological discoveries. The chapter we are about to do today is one such description of the exploration conducted by a team of researchers in Egypt. And the team was headed by an Egyptian archaeologist named Zahi Hawass. The writer clearly portrays the difficulties that they had to face and the struggles they had to undergo while trying to unravel the mystery of the death of King Tut. This forms the central theme of the lesson. It also gives us some idea on the change in the methods of archaeology from a few decades back to the present era of modern technology. Now let's begin the chapter. He was just a teenager when he died, the last heir, the last person entitled to inherit the property of a powerful family that had ruled Egypt and its empire for centuries. He was laid to rest, heavily loaded with gold, and eventually forgotten. Since the discovery of his tomb in 1922, the modern world has speculated, formed several opinions about what happened to him, with murder being the most extreme possibility. Now, leaving his tomb for the first time in almost 80 years, Tut has undergone a CT scan that offers new clues or hints about his life and death and provides precise data for an accurate forensic reconstruction of the boyish pharaoh. According to the Egyptian custom, after the death of their rulers, the bodies are ceremonially preserved by removing the internal organs and they are wrapped in bandages. Such preserved bodies are known as mummies. Here, Zahi Hawass and his team members are trying to take out the mummy from his resting place and then using the modern scientific techniques he is trying to find out the mysteries associated with the death of this ruler. An angry wind stirred up ghostly dust devils as King Tut was taken from his resting place in the ancient Egyptian cemetery known as the Valley of the Kings. While it was happening, a strong wind blew that threw away a lot of dust, and the noisy dust wind gave the impression of taking different shapes. Dark-bellied clouds had scudded across the desert sky all day and now were veiling the stars in casket grey. It was 6 p.m. on 5th January 2005. The huge dark clouds, probably containing a lot of rain, hid the stars as if enclosing it in a grey casket. The world's most famous mummy glided headfirst into a CT scanner brought here to probe the lingering medical mysteries of this little understood young ruler who died more than 3,300 years ago. So their motive is to find the details regarding the death of the king. All afternoon, the usual line of tourists from around the world had descended into the cramped, crowded rock-cut tomb some 26 feet underground to pay their respects. So a lot of people from different parts of the world have reached the place to pay their respects to the king. They gazed at the murals on the walls of the burial chamber. So the burial chamber's wall was decorated with different kinds of paintings and peered, eagerly looked at Tut's gilded face, gold-covered face, the most striking feature of his mummy-shaped outer coffin lid. Some visitors read from guidebooks in a whisper. Others stood silently, perhaps wondering Tut's untimely death in his late teens, or wondering with a shiver if the Pharaoh's curse, death, or misfortune falling upon those who disturbed him was really true. So each of them were engaged in different activities according to their beliefs and according to their wish. The mummy is in very bad condition because of what Carter did in the 1920s, said Zahi Hawass, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, as he leaned over the body for a long first look. Carter, Howard Carter, that is, was the British archaeologist in 1922, discovered Tut's tomb after years of futile searching. Its contents, though hastily ransacked in antiquity, were surprisingly complete. They remain the richest royal collection ever found and have become part of the pharaoh's legend. So here you come across Howard Carter, who was a British archaeologist who first discovered King Tut's tomb. Stunning artifacts in gold, their eternal brilliance meant to guarantee resurrection, caused a sensation at the time of the discovery and still get the most attention. But Tut was also buried with everyday things he would want in the afterlife: board games, a bronze razor, linen undergarments, cases of food and wine. The things or the valuable items associated with the mummy of King Tut was an assurance that the king would definitely have an afterlife. After months of carefully recording the pharaoh's funerary treasures, Carter began investigating his three nested coffins. So his coffin had three compartments or three parts. Opening the first, he found a shroud adorned with garlands of willow and olive leaves, wild celery, lotus petals, and cornflowers, the faded evidence of a burial in March or April. So the presence of certain flowers indicated that the time of burial was sometime in March or April. When he finally reached the mummy, though, he ran into trouble. The ritual resins, the sticky substance, had hardened, cementing Tut to the bottom of his solid gold coffin. No amount of legitimate force could move them. Carter wrote later what was to be done. So at that time when Carter discovered the mummy, it was very difficult for him to separate the body of the king from the base. So he was in a dilemma. He was totally confused about what was supposed to be done to solve this. The sun can beat down like a hammer this far south in Egypt, and Carter tried to use it to loosen the resins. For several hours, he set the mummy outside in blazing sunshine that heated it to 149 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing budged, nothing worked, though he kept it outside in the sun so that the ritual resins would melt and he could easily take it out from the coffin, but it did not work. He reported with scientific detachment that the consolidated material had to be chiseled away from beneath the limbs and trunk before it was possible to raise the king's remains. What do you mean by scientific detachment? It is the basic indifference towards the scientific methods. It was totally unscientific from the part of Carter to cut the joints of the King Tut's body to separate it from the solidified resins. And he had to face severe criticism from different parts because of his unscientific activity. In his defense, Carter really had little choice. If he hadn't cut the mummy free, thieves most certainly would have circumvented, avoided the guards, and ripped it apart to remove the gold. As we have already read, this mummy had the richest royal collection. So Carter argues that if he hadn't done that, the thieves would have definitely removed the gold from there and would have definitely ripped the body apart. In Tut's time, the royals were fabulously wealthy and they thought or hoped they could take their riches with them. For his journey to the great beyond, King Tut was lavished with glittering goods, precious collars, inlaid necklaces and bracelets, rings, amulets, a ceremonial apron, sandals, sheaths for his fingers and toes, and the now iconic inner coffin and mask, all of pure gold. So here you get a long list of things that was found along with the mummy. To separate Tut from his adornments, Carter's men removed the mummy's head and separated nearly every major joint. Once they had finished, they reassembled the remains on a layer of sand in a wooden box with padding with soft material that concealed the damage. The bed where Tut now rests. This is the condition in which King Tut's body was found by Zahi Hawass and his team. Archaeology has changed substantially, materially in the intervening decades, focusing less on treasure and more on the fascinating details of life and intriguing mysteries of death. Now the focus of attention has shifted from the treasures to the reason for the death and other fascinating details of life. In 1968, more than 40 years after Carter's discovery, an anatomy professor x-rayed the mummy and revealed a startling fact. Beneath the resin that cakes his chest, his breastbone and front ribs are missing. The anatomy professor's revelation demanded further inquiry about the matter. Today, diagnostic imaging can be done with computed tomography or CT, by which hundreds of X-rays in cross-section are put together like slices of bread to create a three-dimensional virtual body. What more would a CT scan reveal of Tut than the X-ray? And could it answer two of the biggest questions still lingering about him? How did he die and how old was he at the time of his death? So the researchers are now relying on modern and sophisticated techniques to find the intricate or accurate details regarding Tut's body so as to help find the answers to the most important questions. How did he die and how old was he at the time of his death? King Tut's demise was a big event, even by royal standards. He was the last of his family's line, and his funeral was the death rattle of a dynasty. But the particulars, the details of his passing away and its aftermath are unclear. King Tut was the last heir of a powerful family that had ruled Egypt and its empire for centuries. He was laid to rest laden with gold, and no idea regarding his untimely death is revealed by anybody. So the researchers are trying to find out the reason and the time of his death. In the next part we will get to see the details regarding his family. So this is the end of part 1. Thank you.